Food. It starts out as dirt and seeds, and then grows into something tasteful, something that brings life. Throughout history, people have been finding ways to save this nourishment. Freezing and dehydration are the earliest and easiest ways of preserving because the sun and the cold slow spoilage. As civilizations advance, more and more ways have been found to preserve food. Enclosing food in wooden barrels has helped to have less spoilage. Throughout the ages, farmers have used these barrels for food because they've kept the food for long periods of time, especially through winter. People stored everything they could in barrels, including alcohol, flour, sugar, fruit, and especially meats. They packed it in layers of cloth or straw, then put it into a cellar.
Grow potatoes, and dig a hole, put potatoes in it, apples, potatoes, everything like that. Cover it with straw, and then bury it with dirt. And about Christmas time, take it in and put it in the cellar. And then leave it keep until summer. They had to be the time they started warming up in the summer.
The barrels of food stayed fresh for months, especially when the meat was smoked or salted, but would not last for years. Napoleon of France was not content with the barrels and their lack of long-lasting storage, so he offered 12,000 franc prize for anyone who could invent a long-lasting solution for keeping the foods fresh. His goal was to sustain his army with a lasting supply of food when they took over annexed countries going through famine. Nicolas Appert, a French chef, took up the challenge. After 10 years, he invented a way to keep foods from spoiling. He noticed that wine could stay drinkable in bottles for years, so he tried this method with other food, including eggs, bread, vegetables, and meat. Finally, he perfected a method to bottle all kinds of foods. First, he put the food in the bottle with vinegar or sugar. Then he screwed on a cork using the corking machine and fastened the bottle closed with wire. After much trial and error, he decided to put the jars in a cloth bag with straw inside and boil the bottles until the jars were sealed. This idea of putting jars into bags ensures that if the bottle does break, the glass will not get strewn everywhere, causing cuts or other bottles to be damaged. This new innovation of the can in the 1800s helped provide not only the French military with food, but also prevented scurvy on ships sailing because the sailors would have fresh food on their voyages. The can broke the barrier of hunger for long voyages at sea, providing healthy food. Appert and most of France knew the canning worked, but not the science behind why the can worked. Still, most European countries and American countries adopted this new method of canning as part of the daily life because it was so successful. The glass cans were successful, but there was one setback to them. They broke easily during travel and war. This is why another innovator, Peter Durand, invented a new method that involved canning. He made long cylinders that could be sealed. They are made by hand, but expensive to make, so the military was the only ones who used the tin cans until the late 1800s, when industrialization started to make advancements in technology. He wanted to make sure that food was not wasted by having cans that would not break. People adopted the new tin can as part of their daily lives by adding the canned fruit and vegetables to salads and on picnics until people started to get sick with botulism. Because the factories and the people in the factories were not very clean, can popularity soon drastically decreased. Heinz realized that these putrid cans were bad for business, so they mandated weekly manicures for the workers to make sure that no bacteria was in between their fingernails. This resumed the popularity of baked beans and other goods cans had in store. Canning in general, glass or tin, also increased popularity in the Great Depression. According to Mitchell Welch in the University of Ulster, baked beans and school lunches started in the Great Depression because lunch workers could get food out of cans. Farmers had to rely on cans after their crops were destroyed in the Dust Bowl. Since most farmers canned at least some of their products, it would take more time before farmers starved. The cans helped break the barrier of starvation for farmers and common people by providing sustaining meals. Canning was also popular in World War I because it was considered patriotism to can. People were supposed to create war gardens to help feed the soldiers and their families. Organizations like 4-H taught gardeners how to can foods they harvest in order to prevent waste. The government emphasized that allies would win with more canning, and posters emphasized this. During World War II, canning was also popular because it could make rations last longer. According to the National Agricultural Library, over 4.1 billion jars were canned at home during 1943. Civilians could even apply for an extra ration, especially sugar, for their canning. It could be seen in newspapers that even Lady Liberty preserved the rations, and in this way the government was triumphant in making sure their civilians didn't starve. Other posters promoted devices such as pressure canners as weapons of war against famine, since they could be used to preserve food for millions of people, including the soldiers. Cans and canning equipment broke the barrier of famine so that ordinary people in America wouldn't have their brothers, sons, and fathers worry about foods while they're in war. There was also a decline in home canning after World War II because it was so labor-intensive. People could just as easily buy tin cans from the grocery store for a cheaper price than canning in glass cans at home, where it would take hours versus minutes. People did not need to be as patriotic as during the war, and they wanted for their lives to have some normalcy, so the canning was a burden to their time. What people did not realize was that their cans were used at home brought modern inventions of processed foods that are still used today and taken for granted. The invention of the can brought unity throughout the world and broke the barrier of starvation. Canning has inspired the innovations of other processed foods, including UNICEF's peanut butter-like nutrition packets for starving countries and civilizations. I thought my child was going to die. I wondered what magic would make her recover so soon, said a woman from Sierra Leone who survived Ebola but her children were still starving. Because of the inventions that came from canning, many children and adults are saved from hunger. As canning continues, more and more people will be delivered from hunger. One invention has changed society into the place where hunger is not as big of an issue as it was centuries ago.